W420radionetwork.com.
Welcome back to America's Cannabis Conversation. I'm your host, David Katzmire. We have a very special guest with us today, Larry Sharpe. Larry Sharpe is an independent candidate for governor of New York, representing the Libertarian Party. He has endorsements from Andrew Yang's Forward Party and United NY. He has already registered an uptrend in polling data, and the momentum continues. You can find out more about Mr. Sharpe's campaign at LarrySharpe.com. Sharpe is spelled with an E on the end, so that's LarrySharpe.com. Our conversation on cannabis today will be a rich one, as cannabis has been in the forefront of state legislation and a boom to many economies. New York State's laws have gone through changes recently with legalization of recreational marijuana for adults 21 and older. This moves New York towards the creation of a potential $4.2 billion industry that could become one of the nation's largest markets. That's why we are glad that Larry Sharpe agreed to come onto the program to talk about what this could mean to New Yorkers now and moving forward, and maybe take a review of how things have been done so far as we're getting here. Joining me also on the conversation is my colleague and occasional co-host, Mitchell Rabin of A Better World Media. Mitchell hosts his own program called A Better World on Manhattan TV and his widely circulated podcasts, all of which you can find at abetterworld.net. So, dear listeners, my co-host Mitchell Rabin and I welcome New York gubernatorial candidate Larry Sharpe to the program. Mr. Sharpe, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, to begin, Mitchell, I know that you're very much involved with the cannabis changes that have been going on, and I'm sure you have some questions for our guest, Larry Sharpe, today. So why don't you begin, introduce yourself, and begin with the conversation and some questions. Mitchell?
Okay, Dave. Thanks very much. The name correction is Mitchell Cannabis Rabin, by the way. Larry, you said something prior to our getting on the air that you are pleased that New York State is getting to where it is, that it is progressing along the path, and you're grateful for that, but you also think it's doing it all wrong, if I may quote. So if you would, enlighten our audience. Let us know. What is it that you think needs to be done from what is being done currently?
When I ran in 2018, I wanted to legalize cannabis in a very specific way. I was kind of joking, but I wasn't. I was out in Western New York when I was having this question, and I said, we should regulate cannabis like onions. That's what I said, because in Western New York, we grow onions. So I thought, you know what? That's how we should regulate it, like a plant. Just make it 18 years or older to purchase it at retail. Otherwise, it's a plant. Just take whatever the rules are for onions or carrots, scratch out the word carrot, write the word cannabis, law done. That is what I wanted to do. And you may think I'm joking. I'm actually not. And the reason why I say that is, it is a plant. What we've done is we've made it to where it isn't really going to help New York the way it could. Imagine if we actually did what I said. Now, all of a sudden, local farmers, can grow craft grows. We would support local small business and local small farmers. Will that work in New York State? We already have an example of that working, and that is when we decided to deregulate a little bit when it came to wine and beer. And we had a huge increase in breweries and wineries across New York State. Entrepreneurism came up. People were able to grow their own businesses and go to their jobs. Why shouldn't farmers be able to create craft grows? We could do that. With our new way of doing it now, we can't do that. There's a horrible license. The license will cost about $250,000. What small farmer can swing that? They can't. We've just pushed all the small farmers out. Not just that. If you actually have it to where it's like a plant, there are lots of New Yorkers who have constant pain, and they're not able to hang out with their family and friends and live their best life. Well, what's their option? Option number one is they use an opioid. Opioids are 80% of the reason why we have addicts right now is because of prescription opioids. It is increasing our addiction problems. We have cannabis products. A bunch of that will go down. But not just that. Some people can't afford it. Guess what? Grow your medicine in your backyard if you need to. I don't mind. Let's have some happy New Yorkers. What I would have happen to me often is somebody would come by and say, hey, Larry Sharpe, I hope you win. And I'd say, why? This would almost always be an older woman. You say, because I have chronic pain. And right now I have to send my son or my daughter to go out and buy my cannabis. I don't want them going to jail. So the other option is suffer. That's not a good answer. I'm not okay with that. But I'm still not done. I had a joke, which was like the Obama joke for Obamacare. He said, if you like your doctor, keep your doctor. What I said, if you like your dealer, keep your dealer. If your dealer can grow whatever they want, they simply go down to the office and say, hey, I want to have an LLC, and now they become the same dealer. They just pay their taxes now. So we get regular taxes, you keep your same dealer, everybody's happy. Addicts now also, because, as you know, cannabis also helps people who are withdrawing, dealing with withdrawing symptoms. Now that begins to go away. We've lost those four for this new style in New York State, which has an Office of Cannabis Management. How insanely stupid is that concept? Cannabis has been in the black market for at least 100 years in the United States, and the exact number of deaths from cannabis are 0. So now that we're going to make it legal, now we have to have a regulatory body? How dumb is that? Right? We already have a regulatory body for vegetables. Use that same regulatory body for cannabis. No need to add extra one. Why would you add an extra one? For only one reason. So you can ensure that all the licensing can go to your friends. This is a corruption situation. It's a way that we can have patronage and people who will give their friends the licenses, and the license will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the people who will make money on this will be large real estate companies and permanent capital. That's who will make money in my state, not the farmers, not the people who need pain, not the people who are small-time dealers, not addicts. The people who make money are cronies, large real estate companies, and permanent capital. That's why I'm against it.
We used to have an expression, tell it like it is. And man, that is straight, simple talk, and it puts so much in a nutshell. Mitchell, I want to come back to you in a second, but I just wanted to say, you succinctly put into a brief message what so many people have been saying. Let me bring up the case in California. A lot of growers, the number one complaint amongst them all is that by the time they get done with paying regulation fees and taxes, that they are barely eking out a margin. And some of them are considering if they're even going to stay. But when you talk about the simple solutions that you're presenting here, man, that cuts all through that.
Not only does it cut through, but there's no harm, right? If this was a harmful substance, then I could see why somebody would be afraid. But we have literally a century of data, and it is not a harmful substance. So there is no requirement for it, is my point, right? So you're gaining nothing by creating the regulation, and you're saving nothing by not having it. There's no benefit being except for cronyism. And I'll go one step further, though. It also ensures there will be a black market, and that's also the goal, because creating a black market ensures government can have law enforcement, which includes fines, fees, and civil asset forfeiture. Not only that, they can now save us. The government wants this. The government does very well. Whenever government creates policies, it always supports two groups of people, the very wealthy and the black market. Those are the two it always supports. The very wealthy give it money, and the black market allows to control the weak. So that's why they always do it. And if you look in California, as you said, the black market is still strong. If you remember this story, I'm sure you remember it. There's a bunch of Northern Californian farmers who are on the black market, creating cannabis products. So the larger legal people went to the cops and said, hey, these black market guys, they're taking our money. They're do something. So, of course, California, the smart thing is that, you know what? Let's lower taxes and lower regulations so that everybody can be fair. No, I'm kidding. Of course they didn't do that. They've never do that. What they did instead was they sent the cops to go in to seize everything, and then they paid a vendor to burn the product. That's what we're doing.
And then they got their friends to gather around the burning.
Yeah, well, because their cronies were the companies who burn it. So the cronies got government contracts to burn the product.
Yes, and the black market's still going strong over in California because they're underselling the growers without having to pay regulation and taxation and everything like that. So all these points are corroborated by so many people who have come onto the program, and simple solutions are always the best. Mitchell, what do you think?
Yes, well, Larry, what can I say? You're very sharp. You're really very sharp.
Every day.
You have hit the nail on the head of understanding the larger political arc, if you will, of the way government works, or I should say dysfunctions on behalf of the people, which is really hardly at all. So I love your democratization, if you will, of the potential business. I love the idea of everyone growing their own medicine in their own windowsill, as it may be, or backyard. Mm-hmm. That's the way things have always been with all herbs. Why in the world should this be an exception?
Recently, all the issues in Manhattan have nothing to do with cannabis. Recently, what they have to do is with the lockdowns and the unhappiness within New York State. The COVID lockdowns, the black market that has occurred, not only in weed, but also in fentanyl, also in labor, also in products and services, in all those things, that's been the damage that you're speaking of specifically. That's been the idea of laying off people, now stores that are now locked out, people not being able to get their help for being addicts, people not being able to get their help for mental illness. Those are all the issues. The fact that it became legal is just happened at the same time. It's coincidence.
What do you foresee being the right treatment of people who may be enjoying cannabis or even using it for pain control but then get behind the wheel? What is the means by which we can speak to that issue and endangering the lives of pedestrians? I think there are two things that we deal with.
The first one is we already have laws about that, right? There are already laws against driving under the influence, right? Those laws should exist also for cannabis. The issue we have to do is literally do this. It's grossly simple. And business, in this case, will take advantage of it. Simply let business know, hey, we have to find a way to test for cannabis in the bloodstream. We don't know how. And we will create a very simple thing. If you provide us with a way of doing it, we will buy lots of these machines. Yeah. And they will, right? We bought breathalyzers. That was for alcohol, right? We will buy these machines, whatever those machines are. Do that, and then what will happen? Companies will go, wait a minute, we can make a bunch of government money. Boy, do companies love guaranteed government money. Of course they do. Yes. But not just do companies love it, banks love it. They love to loan to companies that are going to get guaranteed government money. So once you say, we are going to do this, this is going to happen, here's the date when it's going to happen, I guarantee you will have 2, 3, or 4 options of companies coming by and saying, here is how you test for cannabis. And then you go through and you find the answer. Is there a percentage? Is there a blood cannabis alcohol content? I don't know what that is. I'm making this up. I have no idea. But that thing will happen. Whatever is the thing, we'll create. And to be forward with you, we'll probably screw it up front. We probably will because we won't know any better. But over the course of time, we'll get better. We are much better with drunk driving than we've ever been. We screwed up earlier. We're getting better. And we will get better with this too.
So in short, you're really saying to follow the protocols and the laws and regulations that are already in place with in respect to alcohol. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yes,
the structure is already in place. I don't know the details.
I don't know the details of how one tests the level of, how high are you. I don't know how one does that. But I don't have to know that. It's not required. People do know that. We'll figure it out, and we'll work from there.
That will instigate innovation, as you're suggesting.
Yes.
Which I
innovation, once we have the leadership to do so. You're putting things simply again, and they don't have to be that complicated. Just things that affect us on a wide scale and have a big impact don't have to be complicated when it comes to legislation. Mr. Sharpe, would there be major obstacles into bringing a bit of reform and change? What kind of an uphill battle would you have with the New York legislature getting these things simplified in a way that's good for us all?
Yeah, the issue here is it's a good and a bad thing. The bad thing is that our previous governor and current governor, they have made it to where they basically run everything. The reason why they created the Office of Cannabis Management is so they can control everything and not be responsible for anything. What happens is in all of these committees, it's a common thing done throughout all of New York. They create a commission or an office or something, and in that commission, they create 5 people. One person is picked by the Senate, 1 by the Assembly, and 3 by the governor. So the governor puts his 3 cronies in, and they do whatever he says, or he removes them. And the state assembly and the leaders of the assembly and the and the Senate get it so they can be, rewarded by the governor also. It's all system patronage. Now, what happens in New York State is if that office creates a rule or regulation and the legislature doesn't vote it down, I think it's 90 days or 60 days, I forgot the number, whatever time it is, that basically becomes a law. That's unconstitutional, but that's how New York State does it. So now when it happens, there's no recourse. In other words, the legislature didn't do it. It's not a law, so you have no recourse. They make a rule, you're screwed. That happens throughout all of New York State. That's the bad news. The good news is if I'm the governor, I just change them. None of them are laws. That's the rule. I just go, okay, you three guys are fired. Here are my three people. I'm going to put David and Mitchell on. They're going to change the rules, and we're done. So It's bad that we have this system, but it is also good for change. So if I'm in charge, I just put my people in there, and I change it back. And literally we just make the rules. The rules and regulations aren't set yet. The Office of Cannabis Management will do the details. When I put my people in, the details will be things like this. The amount, what it costs you for a license is $0. You are automatically given a license unless you are like a convicted mass murderer or something, right? That's it. You are given a license. Done. So I'll change that rule. So basically it'll become no licensing because it'll be automatic license. So we'll do things like that. Yes.
This is
so it'll be
a breath of fresh air, Mr. Sharpe. Totally a breath of, or a toke of fresh air, if you will. Although this is going to be a pun-filled interview. What can I tell you, folks?
There's no question about it that it should be legal and allowed to be grown by anyone, anywhere, anytime, as long as it's within their own parameters.
Well, the reason why I jump on this is because all of your rights matter all of the time, whether they affect me or not. And I have to be the person if I'm going to say I'm going to be the leader, my job is to make sure that you have the rights that you want to use when you want to use them, as long as, to your point perfectly, as long as it doesn't hurt others. If you're not hurting others, do you. I'm totally okay with that, whether I do it or not. I don't have to like you. I think it's right. In fact, in theory, I could think cannabis is, not a good idea. I mean, I don't think that, but I could. I would still be like, you know what, if you want to do it, go ahead, as long as there is transparency, to your point, knowing that it isn't perfect, that there are some issues that you have to be worried about. Let that be obvious, and you know it, and you make a decision how you see, appropriate.
Amen.
Spoken like a true libertarian. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I think some of our listeners are going to be very enthused with what you're saying about what you're saying here as a candidate about cannabis. So with this conversation continuing and this way of looking forward, I think that the world of cannabis has some hope of not just changing and legalization in itself, but considering how we change, how we legalize.
Yes.
And we're learning from experience and from your insights and forward looking on this. Mitchell, is there anything you wanted to add to the topic before we bring it to a close?
I am grateful that, Larry, you have taken on such an enormous task. I really am. I think it's great.
Larry Sharpe, candidate for governor in New York, and Mitchell Rabin, co-host from A Better World Media at abetterworld.net. Gentlemen, thank you. And to the listeners of America's Cannabis Conversation, keep looking forward and keep your ideas fresh. This is David Katzmire signing out for W420 Radio Network. Thank you.
America's Cannabis Conversation on W420radionetwork.com.